Everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Pat Swazi. I'm president of the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. I see a few people still coming on, but I think we'll go ahead and in the interest of time, we'll get started. I want to welcome you to FOVLAP's first event of 2024. I hope everyone had a great holiday. Just a reminder that we are recording this event, and information from this event will be available on our website in a week or so. Today's format's going to be a little bit different than many of our presentations usually are. We're going to be focusing in three topic areas: funding opportunities, education and outreach, and advocacy. We're going to spend about 30 minutes on each area. And each area will open with a very brief overview by a couple of speakers in each section. And then we're going to open the floor. So we're going to have this much more focused on opportunities for questions, discussion, comments, and so forth. In order to facilitate that, just a few logistics. I'll ask you to stay muted unless you're called on to ask a question or make a comment. I'm going to ask you to use the raise hand feature. So because we'll have a number of people on here. So if you use the raise hand feature, then we can call on you and then you can unmute yourself to answer a question. I'll ask you to try to keep your questions and comments reasonably short so that we can fit everybody in, since we don't have a huge amount of time for each section. You can also use the chat if you'd prefer to put your question in the chat. We do have Susan Gresser is monitoring the chats for us. So go ahead and use the chat for additional questions and comments, or if you want to add more information. I also want to mention that we have a survey that will pop up at the end of the meeting. So when we close the meeting, so if you don't mind staying on for a couple extra minutes, it's very, very quick. It'll take you about 2 minutes to fill out, but it's really helpful for us not only to know what you thought of this particular format, but also suggesting areas of interest that you'd like us to do future events on. So it's really helpful. I also want to mention we have our second event of 2024 coming up on February 20th. And this will be an event discussing watershed action plans, lake watershed action plans. So more on that. Stay tuned for more on that. In the next week or so, we'll have the announcements out. Before we move on to the discussion topics, I've been asked to do a few highlights of the year. I don't want to take a ton of time to do this. I do want to mention, though, a few things from 2023. One was that FOVLAP, with our lake associations, with a great deal of help, we were successful in advocating to have $500,000 put into the base budget of the state for aquatic invasive species prevention and control. This is the first time that there has ever been funding for AIS work in the state budget. All the funding that has supported our greeter programs and other AIS management issues have come from motorboat registration fees and some grant funding. So this was a very big step to actually have budget in the state budget, money in the state budget. A few other highlights from 2023, we presented 5 virtual events, including 2 all-day events, the Lake Seminar on Compliance and Enforcement of Lake Rules, and at the membership meeting, speakers on cyanobacteria, the threat of cyanobacteria. We continue to build our website, so I hope people who are interested in these issues are going to our website regularly. We keep adding information. I want to point out that it includes on our website the full text of our lake-friendly landscaping booklet, and it's downloadable. So if you don't have a print copy or haven't been able to get your hands on a print copy, you can download the full text right from the website. I also want to, just a little reminder, since it's 2024, it's time to renew your membership, or if you aren't a member, to join. You will be getting information about that will be coming out. Our membership committee will be sending out information on that in the next week or so. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speakers. They're going to be talking briefly about funding opportunities, and our speakers are Kent Henderson. He's from Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. He's a FOVLAP board member and chair of our legislative committee. And Dave Johnson from Lake Dunmore, who is also on our board and is the FOVLAP treasurer. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Kent and Dave.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So as Pat mentioned, we're going to spend the first roughly half hour talking about how to fund lake projects. And there are lots of different lake projects. And I want to first show you a summary. There's a lot that's going to be on this slide. Okay. And I'm not going to go through it in huge amount of detail, but it's going to be a good resource for you if you want to look at where you can find information about getting public funding. So in this table, I've listed various needs that lake associations might have. Many of our lakes have aquatic nuisance, milfoil control issues, and prevention of aquatic invasive species. There's, as you know, there's funding available from the DEC and other sources to take care of these needs. Also, many lakes are now considering or have already created watershed action plans, and there's funding available for this process. Once projects around the lake are identified, there's funding available to implement the projects. And then there's also funding to, even before you get to the design phase of a project and implementation phase, there's what's called development funding, which you can use to do scoping studies, to address potential landowner concerns, to do stream assessments and that kind of thing, just to further define real projects. There's money available for education and outreach as well. And there's also money to hire part-time help for your lake association if you get involved in doing some of these projects. So Kent and I, is Kent on the call yet? Speak up
Yes.
if you are, Kent. Okay, good. So we're going to sort of share this first half hour in talking about funding and show a few slides, give a few examples, and then we'll open it up for questions. So as I mentioned, milfoil control is a big, perhaps the dominant activity of many lakes. I know it is for my lake, which is Lake Dunmore. And there's funding available to support this work. It probably will not pay for it all, but there's certainly funding to support it. And, you know, I think for the coming season, there'll be applications due probably in February for aquatic nuisance management. I think the greeter grants probably already have had their application submissions for this coming season. And a lot of that funding comes from DEC and from the Lake Champlain Basin Program. So then I think the next topic here is watershed action plan creation. And Kent's going to give some examples.
I cannot tell if I am muted or not. Am I muted?
No, you're fine.
All right, excellent. Yeah, so I just wanted to describe project that the organization that I work with, the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain. I just wanted to describe an example. So I'll just briefly describe an opportunity that lake associations and watershed organizations can utilize to develop water quality improvement projects to qualify for federal and state funded implementation grants. The purpose of this Lake Watershed Action Plan is to use a combination of desktop analysis and field observations to assess the Fairfield Pond watershed for land use, shoreline encroachment, stormwater runoff, and shoreline erosion to produce a lake watershed action plan. Fairfield Pond experienced dramatic water quality decline due to severe eutrophication in the early 1980s and 1990s, but has since improved to a mesotrophic state according to the data from the Vermont Inland Lake Scorecard. The water quality of the pond is considered stressed, with the watershed score classified as highly disturbed and a trend score in the good category. The pond is also impacted by Eurasian water milfoil. So given that the watershed is stressed and the climate change has increased intensity of runoff, FNLC and the Franklin Pond Recreation Association felt that the Lake Watershed Action Plan would be necessary first step to help maintain and improve the water quality of Fairfield Pond. After receiving this Lake Champlain Basin Program Award, FNLC contracted with Fitzgerald Environmental Associates, who we've worked with closely in the past, to produce this LWAP, which is modeled after ones already produced for Lake Eden and Lake Elmore. Conducting a comprehensive investigation and upline stormwater runoff and shoreline erosion patterns in the Fairfield Pond watershed in its entirety will provide a data library of accurate mapping information for the community that can be used as a resource for future fund-supported projects. So identified projects are being ranked and prioritized, and conceptual plans and funding sources are being developed. A final report will be generated and summarize the projects and will include nutrient loading reductions achieved by implementing the projects that can lead to Vermont supported Missisquoi Basin water quality implementation project applications. And the connection with the Missisquoi Basin water basin is because Fairfield Pond is a contributor to the Missisquoi River, which eventually empties into Missisquoi Bay, and that is what will qualify us for the CLIS funding as we go on. So that'll end my comment on this portion.
Okay. So once you have a watershed action plan, and in my lake, we did this a couple of years ago, the plan identified 60 projects, and we are now implementing a bunch of those. We completed 2, and we have 4 sort of ongoing. There is funding available for implementation, and here implementation includes preliminary and final design, typically from a consulting company, and then actually getting a contractor to do the work. And as I said, there's a lot of clean water funding out there that's available for this activity. Okay, next is planning and research. As I mentioned, often you think you have a project, but you really need to see whether the landowners are willing to go forward, or whether it's warranted to do a preliminary design. And this sort of project development phase is important to get through. And so there is explicit funding by a number of from a number of organizations for this type of activity. Kent?
Okay, so then the next opportunity that I'd like to discuss from the viewpoint of the watershed organization that I'm working with is that we got another grant supported opportunity that other lake associations and watershed organizations can use to inform the public about water quality improvement. And it is through outreach and educational grants that are provided by Lake Champlain Basin Program. Building on our successful partnership with the St. Olive's Museum, teaching lake lessons to fourth graders at local watershed schools, FNLC felt that our organization was positioned to continue providing a valuable teaching resource about our watershed. Our project was to establish curriculum and teach lessons to fifth and sixth grade students at 8 schools that are located in Grand Isle and Franklin counties. And these lessons are about pertinent social and physical sciences of the basin. Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, along with an educational partner, visited the schools to teach lessons and provide field trips that focused on sound principles of data collection, interviewing, observation, and interpretation. We collected photos, audio files, sketches, reflection papers, and reports to help solidify and foster lifelong commitments in the students to educate themselves to make informed decisions about their lakes and ponds. So the main outcome of the course was that the pupils gained confidence in participating and becoming capable of directing their future actions in a fashion that minimizes deleterious effects in our watershed. And so the last type of grant that I'll try to describe to you or introduce you to has to do with the organizational support to increase the capacity of our organization. Lake Champlain Basin Program provided FNLC with this organizational support grant to share information more effectively about projects and initiatives that are focused on protecting the state's water basins, as well as upcoming events and meetings with our growing network of supporters and partners. We use this grant to purchase ArcGIS and Constant Contact subscriptions, to create story maps for at least 3 of our recently completed projects, and to partner with a communications consultant to assist our organization with our outreach efforts. The main objective of this work is to share information more regularly and effectively about projects we complete, and to inspire others to act to improve our waterways. The outputs of the project have been 3 story maps, a greater frequency of communication with our supporters, and an updated project map and tabling materials that are pictured on this slide. With increased organizational support funding, we have greater capacity to share information about the projects that we complete and inspire others to act. Finally, in addition to sharing information about our projects and events online, we also recognize the value in attending, participating, and tabling at community events and meetings throughout the basin. We use this organizational support grant to update the large display map, as you can see at our table, that shows all of our projects, as well as purchasing new tabling materials and an updated organizational brochure.
Okay, questions?
Susan has her hand up. Susan, you want to unmute?
Yep. So 2 things. One is the grant and aid program for 2024. The applications are not on the website. They will not be there until the beginning of February. That's just informational. And then the second thing is, so a lot of these programs were from the Lake Champlain Basin project, they were funded. My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, is that they will only fund projects in their basin. So if you were in the Northeast Kingdom, not in their basin, they would not fund any projects, even, you know, projects that fit into these categories. Is that correct or incorrect? Does anybody know that?
That's correct. No,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could I add that DEC is just rolling out their water quality enhancement grants? And I think there are 3 organizations that have put out requests for funding through those projects. I know I received information from the Watersheds United of Vermont. I think Mount Scottney may have one of those grants, and I don't know the third organization. But those enhancement grants are just beginning to come out, and that was the purpose of the Clean Water Board, was to be sure to provide funding in areas that are not served, or they're not addressing the TMDL that has been assigned to Lake Champlain and to Memphremagog.
Are there other questions? Comments? I'll add, perhaps I see Laura and a few other people from DEC might want to add that DEC is also funding some of the Lake Watershed Action Plans that are not in the Lake Champlain Basin program. I don't know if Laura or someone, Misha, I think was on.
I'm here. I can say that.
Allison,
There's
oh,
lots of
Allison,
funding
there you are.
sources.
There
Yeah.
you are, Allison. Thank you.
Outside of the Lake Champlain Basin program, there's a lot of DEC funded opportunities for clean water projects. Kent mentioned a bunch of them, but the QUISPs in the basins that clean water service providers exist in, and then the enhancement grants through Watershed United Vermont, Mount Scottney, and the third one was the NRCC, the Natural Resource Conservation Council. So there's throughout the state, there's funding opportunities, but LCBP is only in the Lake Champlain Basin, which does cover about a third of the state. So, and yeah, DEC does fund watershed action plans. We'll talk more about that when I talk, and then also in February.
Thank you, Allison. This is an opportunity to comment, express concerns. If anybody's wondering how these things get done, or if anybody who's had some of these grants wants to make some comments about the actual nitty-gritty of getting a grant, administering a grant, or if Dave or Kent wants to maybe talk a little bit about that. I think it's important. Polly Ruhan, I see your hand up. Could you unmute yourself?
Yes, I think I'm a good example of the person you just described in terms of seeking grants. I'm involved with Halls Lake Association, which luckily has been involved with Allison in the Lake Watershed Action Plan. So I'm excited to hear about that from her. But in terms of the grants for the invasive species, I know that this is something that our Lake Association has pursued in the past, however, not in recent years, in which I've now become a resident of the area and am now becoming involved. I'm concerned because I see that the grant isn't posted. The application is posted in the beginning of February and then is due, later on in February. As a person new to this grant writing process, I would be interested in knowing, what does this application look like? What information do I need to have to fill this out? And I understand it's in conjunction with the town, but I would want to know more about that process now instead of waiting until that application is actually posted. Is there a way that I can do that?
Dave, Kent,
Well,
anybody?
I think, well, certainly one thing you could do would be to talk to DEC, and I'm not sure who that would be. Would that be Kim Jensen or Olin Reed about to get an application or example of an application?
Yeah, I think reaching out to either Kim or Olin to get, to ask those questions would be the most helpful. Just so, yeah, to find out what kind of information you need to have prepared.
Yeah, this is Jackie, and I've been doing this with our town for the last few years, and all the application pieces are on the website, so you could download those and look at those so that you would know what the questions are and what the expectations are for that. So you would have that available to also share with like the town clerk, et cetera. And once the first one will probably take some time, but after you've done that, the questions don't really change. So you'll know what to expect from when you apply the next year, et cetera. And when you do your final report for them at the end, you'll know what they're asking for.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So yeah, this first line here of links would get you to where you want to be, I think, in terms of the website. And this presentation and the others from today will be on the FOVLAP website shortly.
Takes a couple days to get them up, but yeah, we'll have them up there for you. So those will be available. Does anybody want to comment? Anyone else want to either comment or ask questions on funding opportunities? Not, I'll throw out a comment. So besides the aquatic nuisance control grants, there's many other grant opportunities, and Dave and Kent sort of went over a number of them, and a number of them are listed. Besides, I'll just mention that if you haven't done this before, you haven't been involved very much, every grant funding organization that you might be working with, whether it's, the DEC Aquatic Nuisance Control, or it's one of the other ones on their Lake Champlain Basin program, they all have guidelines, and they're usually fairly easy to find on their websites about how they want them done, and they're often different. And what kind of information you need to provide. But that's only the first step. If you get the grant, you have to administer the grant. And I think that for volunteer lake associations, that's something to really be very aware of. Each of these organizations also have different requirements for how you administer the grant and how you have to report. Some grant agencies, for example, require quarterly reports, whether or not you're doing any work in that quarter. So, for us, much of our work is seasonal. So we're often, really rushed doing lots of things during the summer months and then not much during the winter. But if you have a grant where that agency requires a quarterly report, you still have to write that quarterly report for January through March, even if you haven't done anything particular. So that means someone on your association, on your board or whatever, has to be responsible for that, has to make sure they have that on their calendar, that they understand what the guidelines are for what the report needs to include, and that all of that information is collected and someone's responsible for it. And I think that can be an issue for volunteer associations, and something you want to remember and maybe even check out before you make a decision to apply for a grant. And I'm not discouraging it because they're important, but you do want to be aware of that. Yeah, is that David Prince? Did you want to say something? If you want to unmute yourself. I can't. There you go.
Oh, yeah, I can't. I've been looking for the place to raise my hand, and I haven't been able to find it.
That's okay. If you just wave, I'll probably see you.
All right, thank you. I'm kind of new to this, but I have a few questions specific to one of our problems at Shadow Lake. I don't know if there would be grant money available for a study of the actual conditions that exist at the lake to understand really what the water quality could be and what it is. My specific concerns are that we have a deficient and a defective outlet flow on our dam. And the dam is only allowing, this past summer, we were above normal pool, except for 2 weeks. The whole summer, we were above normal pool, close to 20 inches of water. We had an engineering study done to determine how quickly water exited the lake. And for every 20 inches of water put into the lake, it takes 41 days for it to exit without any new water coming into the lake. We had to forego half of our dives this year, our milfoil dives, because the water wasn't clear enough in Shadow Lake to perform the dives. And we also had a lot of shore erosion, and we had to reduce, or we had to beg people not to use their boats the way that they normally do. This has been an ongoing problem for about 10 years now. And the dam, we found that our 36-inch valve at the dam is only able to be opened to 60%. And our debris rack is more than 50% obstructed when it's clean because of the design. So I realize those are not anything to do with the watershed itself, but they certainly seriously affect our lake water quality. And I didn't know if there was anything at all. I've been headed all over in every direction with Jeff Crocker and Ben Green, and when Oliver was at the state level, Oliver Pearson. We just don't seem to be coming up with a solution for this. And I think a study, if we could get one funded, to determine what the potential water quality could be and where we're at would be certainly helpful in the cause of getting this fixed.
So to me, and I'm no expert, but I would consider maybe looking at these development grants, for a scoping study of what such a improvement might do. I know there are grants for removing dams. There's opportunities for, but I don't think those would apply. But I think maybe a scoping study to see, just as you say, what effect would improving that gate have on the lake. That might be quite appropriate for this type of funding.
We had 3 alternatives drawn up by an engineering company to making an actual spillway instead of just the valve, and we're having difficulty with the town. The town owns the dam, and everything costs money, and all we'd like to know really is how to continue into the future, whether it's a viable solution. When we get 20 inches of water in 3 days, and then it takes 41 days to exit, and then you have back-to-back storms, 3 or 4 in a summer. It's just crazy the impact that it has to water temperature, algae, all kinds of things. And I thought if we had a natural stream type flow where water came in 3 days and exited in approximately the same amount of time, I'd like, maybe a study could shed some light on how that would benefit the lake.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that could be definitely a clean water issue. I mean, if it's causing shoreline erosion, which means more, sediment nutrients coming in the lake, it certainly is going to affect the water quality. So,
right, and we're in the process of trying to reclassify the lake to Class A, and I can't imagine how that could happen without understanding where we actually are. I mean, we'd have to set some goals. If we reclassify, I think we have to set goals to actually sustain that level. And if we're not there now, I don't know how we're going to come backwards and fix it.
Right. That certainly sounds like an issue, and worth exploring maybe these opportunities. Certainly Watersheds United, they have a number of grants. There more will be announced, I understand. So, and that would definitely apply to your area, since you're not in the Lake Champlain Basin. We have about a minute left. Are there other comments or maybe some suggestions of where to look, or other issues that have come up that people want to mention in terms of funding or grant getting or grant management? Okay, I don't see any hands up. Oh, wait, there is Kent.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe address David's topic. And what you're describing is very similar to what we saw at Fairfield Pond. And the residents were saying that the lake level was too high, you know, in a lot of the situations. And it went back to beaver activity around the outlet. And what it led to by just working on the project, it gave an opportunity to open up communication between the town select board, road commissioner, this recreation association. And it wasn't 2 days after the topic was brought out that the town went to work on beaver control. And I know that's not your issue, but that could be the outcome of working through that sort of an apparatus to work with your lake. There'd be more benefits to a lake, you know, assessment watershed, because I think we've got 30% designs out of that, and then it addresses a variety of issues. There's an area where we are looking at creating a large protected wetland. There are some agricultural issues where we could work constructively with some farmland owners. And then there are a few opportunities for Lakewise to get on the lake. There are a lot of participation with Lakewise on that pond, but this will open it up, and hopefully we will have a lot more participation in that program.
Thank you. Thanks, Kent. That's about time. There was one comment. Susan, did you want to read that comment? I saw a comment pop up.
There's a comment by Allison that Shadow Lake has an LWAP in process. And you can contact the Orleans County NRCD for details about that. The LWAP will be completed in the spring. I don't know if Allison wants to talk more about that.
No, those are just some details if you're interested and didn't know that there was an LWAP happening at Shadow Lake. Orleans County NRCD is working on that currently.
Thank you. And that plan might have some discussion of the issue that you brought up, David. So
yeah, we're in discussions. I've been involved with Sarah Damsel, and we have another meeting in another week and a half or so. But really their focus is on watershed and stream bank management and erosion around the lake. I was just, this is my first time meeting with you guys, and I'm trying to hit every avenue that's out there. That's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kent and Dave, for that presentation, and we're going to move on. So our next topic is education and outreach, and presenting on that is going to be Jackie Sprague, who's the FOVLAP Vice President she's from Harvey's Lake. She's also chair of the events committee. So she was responsible for getting this organized. With her will be Allison Marchione. You know Allison, shoreline restoration ecologist at DEC, and Laura DeLugalecki. I know many of you also know Laura, who's the lake and shoreline permit analyst. So if you all want to go ahead and unmute yourselves, you are on.
Just a comment.
Yes, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
If you want to raise your hand, just hover your cursor over the reactions icon at the bottom, and raise hand is one of the things you can do there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thank you. Okay, Allison, Jackie, and Laura, you guys are on.
I guess my first question is, who who is sharing the PowerPoint.
You should all be able to share your
Yep.
screen, so whoever's got the PowerPoint can do it.
All right, I will go ahead and do that.
Thanks.
And Jackie is up first.
Okay. Well, while she's putting that up, I'll just start. Pat said that I'm from Harvey's Lake, but I wasn't always from Harvey's Lake. We bought our camp at Harvey's Lake in the 80s, and with some other people around Harvey's Lake, they said I should get involved with this organization that was in the northern part of the state, and it was called the Northern Federation of Lakes and Ponds. And I did that. And so since the 80s to currently, I've been involved with the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds, and I was a total novice to living on a lake and understanding anything about it. And one of the things that has made a significant difference for me is the people that I've met that are so knowledgeable through the state, through the New England people that work on lakes and ponds. And then they also used to offer a lakes seminar that was held in Chicago every year. So I used to represent Vermont there and met people from all over, well, the United States and other countries, just to learn more about. And I just want to know, I am not a lake scientist. I'm an educator. I taught little kids up to 2nd grade forever. So that's my background. So what I wanted to do first was I just wanted to talk a little bit about reviving organizations. And I know that a lot of lakes and lake associations go through sort of an ebb and flow where they're really working on a lot of things, and they're getting new members and generating a lot of funding and stuff. But I also know that then you go through that ebbing part where it's like, okay, we can't get people to join the boards and that kind of thing. So I just want to throw out some ideas of some of the things that I've learned from other people. And then I would like you to share things that have been successes in your lake associations or some of the challenges that you've had. And then after we do that part, I'm just going to talk a little bit about if you're looking at creating a lake association, I can give you some pointers on that. So first of all, what I've learned from Harvey's Lake Association is that we tend to be a social organization rather than an environmental association. But with that said, I will have to say that having social events like champagne brunches and ice cream socials and raffles and having music available for people to listen to has generated more members as well as a lot more money. And which absolutely threw me for a curve. I was not expecting that to happen, but that really has worked for this association to generate funding as well as getting people more involved. The fundraising piece for some associations is a huge effort. Some of those little ones are you take in maybe $1,000 or a couple $1,000. We take in probably a couple $1,000 with ice out, and we do raffles of a kayak and a paddleboard annually, and that brings in a few $1,000s just by doing things like that and selling raffle tickets. And what increased that was being able to buy the tickets online and to be able to pay your membership online instead of always having to fill out a form and sending it in, or filling out a ticket and sending it in. The other thing that has really made a significant difference to Harvey's Lake is building a relationship with the town. And I am not a person that likes to get up at town meeting and talk, but I did start going and introducing myself and other people from the lake and talking about what an important part the lake was to the community, and talking about the projects that we wanted to work on and that we'd really like some funding. And so for several years, when we were working on a volunteer greeter program, we asked for funding to support that, to be able to pay greeters. And so every year the town would vote on it, and they would give us a little bit more money and a little bit more money. And finally, one of the select board members said, why don't we just put this in our budget? So it finally happened. So we get money from the town every year that goes to the greeter program. So with that, we also apply to one of the grants that Dave and Kent talked about, and receive more money from them to help support paying greeters with that. So there are all these like little pieces and that making those relationships that actually makes a difference. And I know sometimes that's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for me, but it has definitely worked for our association in order to have those relationships with the town, the select board. Going to the select board, I also don't like doing that either. But going there and introducing myself and actually being called one of those lake people, which was sort of humorous and also annoying. But then they at least know. They know that there are people that live here year round. We're paying taxes. We're part of this community. And then they say, oh, okay, so maybe we should give some, a little bit of money to help with this, et cetera. So with that piece done for that I've shared, what are some of the successes that other lake associations are having with either fundraising or increasing your membership or whatever? Oh, come on, there must be some good ones out there.
I can't. Someone want to answer that? Oh, there we go. It just says iPad. I can't tell who it is. Go ahead.
Hi, Pat. This is Jennifer Andrews.
Oh, hi, Jen.
Hi, from Shadow Lake. I'm not being able to see the rest of the people on the screen, but that's okay. I just wanted to share a couple of really terrific things that have been happening at Shadow. One is that we're working really hard on a new website, and we're going to be really excited to present that in shortly. We've also been, as Allison mentioned, working on Lake Watershed Action Plan, and the final report on that is going to come out in a month or so. And it's just been an incredible amount of work that has been done by many people, and we're so grateful. We've had lots of new residents around the lake. Properties have exchanged hands, and it's really great to see their gusto about being thrilled to be at Shadow. It's also nice to be able to have the oldsters share their information on native plantings and how to deal with runoff. And they're so appreciative of that new knowledge. We also have one new resident who's decided to take on the responsibility of doing a candy bingo. And that's been lots of fun. And like Jackie said, when I became president, I decided that I thought it was important, if we're going to be asking for money from the town to help with our greeter program, to actually show up at town meeting so that people could have a face to go with our lake association. And the town has stepped up every year and given us donation to the greeter program. We're so grateful to them. It also allowed me to reaffirm the incredible economic importance that Shadow Lake has for the town of Glover and the surrounding areas, as well as all the businesses in our area. So it was really nice to be able to go and greet people at town meeting, and for them to also be able to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, about what's going on at the lake. So
thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. You said that extremely well. I forgot one other thing is newsletters, is doing a newsletter once or twice a year, where you're sharing stuff that, like, say, the Federation is doing, or like the webinars that are being put on, but also what's happening on your lake. Like if you have loons, people love to read about loons, and also about challenges that may be coming up, or have someone that's been involved on the lake for a significant amount of years. Like my husband has been coming since he was like 1 year old, every single year with his family, and until we bought a camp and started coming. And the stories that a lot of these people tell growing up, when you could wear the little belts around when you were water skiing and stuff like that, you know, those kind of things. So having somebody write a story, people absolutely love reading the newsletter. So that's another thing. Yes, it takes people. It takes someone that's committed to wanting to work on this and to have a committee, but it doesn't always have to be the board. It can be other people in the area that might be interested. Oh, you've got someone that writes for something else, maybe that they can come and help with that. So that outreach and doing those relationships really make a significant difference in being successful. The last thing and this will be really short, is if do not have an association, I put my first thing was the Vermont Secretary of State's website is your friend, because they tell you exactly what you need to be a 501c3. It's easy to go onto the website and find out the stuff that you need, and they have the different like applications for different things that you need to do. And then the things that you will need that do take time are bylaws, procedures, the policies and procedures that you may need. But again, it's not just the board or an individual that has to do this. There are other people that can support and help write these. And you don't have to create them yourself. You can go on the FOVLAP website and look at us and use them as a template, or, oh, I want to make sure I put this, or talk to other lake associations and what they've used. The other thing that FOVLAP has just done in the last few years is committee charters. When you have committees that are doing things like the events or grants, having a charter of what's expected, so when there's turnover on the board, people know what to do. And making sure you look
Tracy.
outside the board. So Tracy has her hand up, I think.
Yeah, Tracy has her hand up. Unmute yourself, Tracy. Unmute yourself, Tracy.
Thank you. I live between Echo Lake and Seymour Lake, and this is an event that was extremely successful. It was so many years ago, but it was a septic social. And we had 2 lakes presenting. One homeowner showed an older septic tank, and then another homeowner on the other lake showed a newer one. And along with that came Mary Clark, who works for Groundwater. I don't know if she still works for them, but the Vermont Wastewater Management. We had a septic designer. We taught what septic 101 for folks, how to check your septic tank. It was part of Lakewise and just raising awareness. Very well attended. We had about 50 people. And so it ended up, it wasn't a fundraiser, but it was a social event, social/educational.
That's
Thanks,
great. Those
Tracy.
were very popular, by the way. Those septic socials are very popular. Well, that's
Okay,
it for
Laura.
me.
Laura or Allison?
Great. Yeah, I'll jump in quickly. Oh, here's some links that Jackie had. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Laura DeLugalecki. I work for the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation in the Lakes and Ponds program. And I specifically work with lake and shoreland regulations, and I also do a lot of outreach and education. I just have a few quick things to mention, and then I'll pass it over to Allison so she can introduce herself and let her continue. But basically, you know, I just wanted to make folks aware in FOVLAP and individual lake associations that we do a lot of work already in training municipalities and realtors, but we can also provide training and outreach materials to lake associations or to FOVLAP. We can connect groups with specific outreach materials on a specific topic that you can distribute. And we can also do one-on-one or small group technical assistance or brainstorming about a project on a lakefront. One thing that I've done a lot of is meet with groups, whether it's a lake association or just small groups of citizens who wanted to get together to talk about what the regulations are on the lakeshore, best practices, you know, kind of the why we want to do what we're trying to do. So just kind of kickstarting some of that outreach that's really helpful in the community. I've also and this, I'm saying me, but there are 3 folks that work in our regulatory group, and we cover different regions of the state. So this is something that myself and my colleagues can all help with. But we've written, Jackie just mentioned newsletters. So we've provided articles for newsletters for lake associations to update folks or just remind folks about regulations or compliance and enforcement issues. I've had specific requests, like perhaps, for example, there's a lot of interest in decks and people want to understand what the state thinks about decks. I've written an article about decks, or I've written an article for a lake association about shoreline stabilization and the use of riprap versus seawalls. So there's lots of topics. If you feel like there's a, some part of some specific thing that your community might need additional guidance or information on, you can lean on us as a resource. And then we can connect you with, also if you're working on projects from your Lake Watershed Action Plan, or working with a natural resource conservation district on some sort of project, you can also collaborate with us for guidance on regulations. And we can also connect you if there are any other regulations beyond lakes and ponds that might be required. We can help assist you to make sure that all those questions are directed to the appropriate channels. So that's really I just wanted to let you know that we're a resource out here, and that we are happy to work with you and would love to, provide some additional guidance. And I'm going to pass it over to Allison to talk about, Allison, is it okay if I go to this next slide?
Yep, totally.
Okay. Just let me know when to switch slides.
Sure. So hi, I'm Allison Marchioni. I'm a shoreline restoration ecologist with Vermont DEC. And I do a ton of outreach and work very closely with lake associations. I recognize a lot of the names that are here today because I have either worked with you on a project or Lakewise or LWAPs. And so those are sort of the kind of things I'm going to really briefly go over, just to let you know that these programs are out there, that your lake association can collaborate with DEC on them. And then I'm here really as a resource for y'all. So the Lakewise program, for anyone who doesn't know, is a free stormwater management and erosion assessment tool that offers technical assistance and can help pair landowners with funding resources. So it's basically an assessment program. It's run through DEC, though there are tons of trained assessors throughout the state. A lot of local NRCDs or watershed groups are trained to do these assessments and kind of help shepherd landowners through the process. But what we're really trying to do is teach lakeshore landowners how to better manage their properties for stormwater, which helps to improve the quality of water in the lake and prevent erosion, and also has the added benefit of usually creating some wildlife habitat along our shorelines and making sort of a more natural looking shoreline buffer. So I'm not going to read off all of these bullet points about what Lakewise is, but it is a program that anyone who owns lakeside property can participate in. This includes individual landowners, businesses, town, beaches, state parks, any lakeshore property. It doesn't even have to be a developed property. We also have an assessment for undeveloped parcels of land. And the best way to get involved in this program, if you're a lake association and you're interested in getting other people on your lake involved, it's to have a Lakewise champion at your lake association. There's a couple of them on this call today. Thank you. You guys know who you are. And that is really a point person on the lake who does, some education and outreach to their neighbors and their friends to get them involved in the program. And then if you're an individual interested in having your property assessed, the best way to start is just to send me an email and we'll talk about it. So it's a really fun program. I really enjoyed doing it, and I encourage any lake association concerned about their water quality or wildlife habitat or anything like that to get involved with this. Laura, you can go to the next slide. So another thing that I work on a lot with lake associations are lake watershed action plans. DEC is one of a couple of different funding options. We already kind of covered that LCBP also funds lake watershed action plans, but there are something like 12 right now that are directly funded through DEC. For those lake watershed action plans, I'm the technical project manager who kind of oversees the process. And for LCVP funded LWAPs, I also just assist in a technical capacity for performing these plans and assessments. So again, an LWAP is a planning and assessment tool with the goal of identifying the greatest threats to a watershed and to the health of the lake from non-point source pollution in their watershed. And it results in a prioritized list of projects. This kind of already got covered, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, though I am happy to answer questions and put a plug in for that February webinar where we're going to talk all about lake watershed action plans. If people are interested in knowing more and getting really into the nitty gritty of how this process works, I would really encourage you to attend that workshop. You can go to the next slide. Wastewater workshops, formerly called septic socials, were already also talked about. These are a great way to get your community together to talk about septic and wastewater issues. These are actually run by Kristen Ashmankis. She is in drinking water and groundwater protection, which is a different division of DEC, but she does a great job with these presentations. I went to one in Fairleigh last summer that was super well attended and went really in depth into these. I mean, I learned a lot of new stuff about septic. I'm not a septic, expert at all, but if your lake association is interested in sort of septic and these kind of questions, I would highly encourage you to have a wastewater workshop. They're fantastic. You can go to the next slide. And finally, best management practice. It's up here. You gotta like hit the button a couple times. I saw your face. So we have best management practices. We've got these Lakewise info sheets that are really wonderful. They're how-tos of all sorts of different projects that homeowners can tackle on their own, or have a landscaper or a management company do, or even some of these projects might rise to the level of applying for grant funding, like some rain gardens or shoreline stabilization projects. So this is one of many different kinds of handouts that we have to give to landowners and lake associations. These are on the Lakewise website, but there's a ton of others out there. And again, if you're interested in sort of providing these to your lake association members, you could contact me and we'll figure out how to best do that. So those were just the quick 4 things I wanted to point out as ways that I can be helpful to lake associations. And I guess we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah. The questions or comments? It's a lot to take in.
The big takeaway is we're out here. Contact us if you if you have questions or something.
Yeah, I think that certainly Lakewise work has been great. Allison and her staff have been great help to around my home lake, and that's been something we've been able to generate a lot of interest in, and well worth doing, I think. And Allison mentioned that it's not just individual homeowners. Our beach area got a Lakewise award, so it's there's lots of different ways to get people, and it's a great opportunity to sort of point out how a lakeshore line can look beautiful, protect the lake, and still be enjoyable. You still get a view, you can still have a view, you can still have space for play on the lakeshore. So I think getting your lake association members interested. Other comments too about kickstarting interest in in a lake association or in your lake association. Any other comments from Laura or Allison or Jackie on any of this? We have a couple minutes. Okay. Hearing none. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So we will move on. So our last presentation is going to be on advocacy, and Jeremy Jones from Lake St. Catherine, who's a member of the FOVLAP board and also the chair of our website committee and mainly responsible for our beautiful website, will be speaking. And I also will join in and speak on advocacy issues. So Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and get started?
Hey everyone. So it looks like I have a new computer and it didn't like that I haven't approved Zoom yet. So Dave, I don't know if you could share our slides. Is that possible? If not, I'll have to hop out real quick and hop.
Well, I'll start working on it. See who gets
you know
there
what?
first.
All right, I'm gonna hop back out and right back in. That'll make it so that I can do it. Excuse me 1 second. Apologies, everybody.
Okay. Well, while Jeremy's doing that, I can at least give a brief overview on what we're going to talk about. We're both going to talk about advocacy. Jeremy's going to talk about more local, working with your local select boards and local representatives. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the legislative side of things, working with the state legislature. And I can do a little bit of that. Just curious how many people here work with either their local town governments versus, do people really get involved? I know Jackie mentioned that. Oh, here's Jeremy's back again.
Sorry about that.
Are you
folks.
able to?
Yeah,
are you able to do it?
Zoom
Okay.
and not reopen it. So just give me 1 second. I can start this up.
Okay.
Pat, while Jeremy is doing what he's doing there, I just wanted to compliment both you and he for a great article in Vermont Digger the other day.
Thank you.
I think
Thank
that that should be a continued thing. It really, it was great.
Thank you.
It highlighted some important things.
Well, I'll mention, since we are on advocacy, I'll mention that it wasn't quite planned, but it was very fortuitous that it came out the day it did, because on that day, Kent Henderson, who you just heard, and Jay White, both of whom were on our legislative committee, were at the card room at the state legislature that day, sort of doing a meet and greet with legislators. And apparently there was lots of comments and conversation about that article, which had just come out on VT Digger that morning. So it was kind of interesting timing, but good timing.
Hey, Pat, you just
Thanks.
need to make it so I can share again since I
Oh.
left.
Sorry, I thought I had you all set up there.
Yeah, but on that article, thank you. And also thank you to all the lake associations that do such good work around the state, and to the DEC for all their great support and all the work that they do as well.
Okay, Jeremy, you should be able to do it.
Okay, there we go. All right, everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So communication is key. That's one of the things that we'll talk about, and we'll go through the slides really quickly so we can have more of a discussion. But communications is key, and just as we were talking about, our voices can make a difference. So it was great to hear all that about the commentary that came out the other day. So you've heard some of this from some of the other speakers, like Kent mentioned it in one of his things, and Jackie also touched on this, but engaging with your lake community is really important. Keeping them up to date by having a great website, and keeping that updated with your news of your current work, and maintaining a social media presence, creating newsletters, sending emails, and holding in-person events. Those are all really key to building your lake community and being able to reach them and educate them. And use of an association website service can be really helpful. So I heard one lake association is working on a new website that can really help with your membership, a place where folks can go to get all the latest information, and making it very easy for them to renew and become a member. There are lots of association service-based websites where you can set up your website, And then the back end of the website can do all of your membership stuff where you can have a database and keep track of all your folks, send emails from it. Or you can roll your own and set up a WordPress website, and that's what the Federation did. And that's what our new website is based on. So we can answer questions about that if anybody has any questions on that. And then also, you've heard some of this already as well, engaging with your select boards and your legislators. So, send them your emails and other correspondence like you would your lake community, invite them to your events, meet with your town managers and administrators, meet with your local conservation commissions, ask to be added to the agenda for your select boards, speak at town meeting day, and request online meetings with or in-person meetings with your senators and representatives. You may find that they're very responsive if you reach out to them and ask to speak to them, and they'll be interested in what you're doing, and hopefully you can gain their support. If you need to find who your senators or reps are, there's a link there at the bottom, and you'll be able to pick your town, and that will direct you to who your senators and legislators are for your area. So I'll hand it over to Pat.
Thank you, Jeremy. So as I mentioned before, I was going to talk a little bit more about advocating at the state level, and there's a number of different ways to do that. And these are just some examples. Jack Widness is here, and is one of the leaders of this first item, which is this Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes group, which was a citizen group that was formed specifically to petition DEC to adopt a wake boat rule. And they've been working for several years, and rule is just about there. One more step on February 1st, and we hope to see something implemented. But this is one way when a really major issue comes up to work on advocating at the state level. The second thing, we really activated a lot of member organizations, and are still lake associations. We're still working with lake associations on this issue of the use of aquatic herbicide and how, and sort of what the permitting process is around that. I think already mentioned, Shadow Lake already mentioned that they are petitioning to be reclassified as an A1 water body. Several other lakes are as well. And there's actually 12 lakes that are eligible to be A1 waters. This would provide greater protection for these very pristine waters. It would require the state to take action should the water quality begin to degrade at, it's a much quicker action than maybe if it's not classified as A1. We've been supporting these petitions, and we are supporting requires a legislative change in minor legislative change. And so the Federation has been supporting that. And in fact, there is legislation that we are working on, and that I testified on at the Senate Natural Resources Committee last year, and we are hoping that we'll be able to help to advocate to get this legislation done. The final item here is that we worked hard last year to raise awareness of the poultry funding for aquatic invasive species control and management, and to get better funding. And as I mentioned, one of our highlights was that we were able to get $500,000 into the state budget. And this is the very first time that AIS funding has been in the state budget. And that took really raising awareness. I think that many of our state legislators were simply not aware of the amount of work, volunteer work, that was being done in this area, with very, very small amount of funding through the motorboat registration fees, which is what funds the Greeter Grant program, this grant and aid program. So these are areas that have shown over just this last year or two where our voices can be heard if we are willing to make noise. And I think that's an important point, that we really need to bring attention to our issues and let people know. I think all of our volunteers work very, very hard, and we've been quieter than we need to be. We can go to the next slide.
Pat, there was in the chat, someone wanted you to talk about what would allow a lake to classify as A1. What does that really mean? What What qualifications do you need?
So I think Laura probably knows the exact numbers better than I do, but I believe it requires a phosphorus level below 12 part. How do you Laura, go ahead.
Oh gosh, no, I actually am not an expert in this exactly. But it's like essentially it's reclassifying high quality waters that have low phosphorus, that exceed the water quality standards. And the idea is to maintain those healthy water quality standards.
Right.
I think it's
And
between 8 and 12. And I think the big thing
Yes.
is you have to actually be testing in midsummer. You have to have data
Yes.
for 5 consecutive years.
Yes. So, and if you look at the lake scorecard that's on the DEC website, and you look at the lakes, you can see sort of where the most pristine lakes fall, phosphorus levels, I think no AIS, those types of requirements. And it is below 12. I'm sorry, it's like parts per million or parts per billion of phosphorus. I forget the exact measurement that's used. So we have 12 lakes that are eligible. Four have petitioned: Caspian, Shadow, Echo, and Raponda. Jack, did Raponda petition? Raponda is eligible. Maidstone's the fourth one. Maidstone has petitioned. Raponda is an eligible lake. Seymour's eligible. Peggy, I see your hand up. So
I don't think AIS play into A1 classification. I'm quite confident of that.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
So a few of the others, I'm trying to think of a few of the others. So we have about 12 that are currently eligible. 4 have petitioned, and it's being held up right now. In statute, there is one item in the statute that requires that A1 watersheds, because this would really reclassify the whole watershed, A1 watersheds cannot have septics above 1,000 gallons per day flow rating. This, of course, was in the 1970s. We now have newer, more up-to-date, more modernized septic systems that discharge cleaner at far greater volumes per day. And so the idea is, at the same time, implementing a much stronger set of anti-degradation rules, which DEC has been working on and is going through that rulemaking process, and then potentially allowing a larger flow per day on septic systems in an A1 watershed, but requiring them to have less discharge, essentially. That's the very simplified way of explaining it. So there is legislation. It passed the Senate last session. It's in the House this session. It's at the House Environment and Energy Committee, and we're hoping that they will move it forward and that it will pass. And then these lakes that have petitioned will have their petitions reviewed, and we can begin to see classification of these lakes, which would provide more protection for them. So that is one of the areas, and we've become involved in it. And as I said, I testified on behalf of the Federation last year, and I'm hoping that it will be taken up again on the House side, and I'll testify again on that issue. And really, my point is, we can do this. We can make ourselves known to our state legislators. We can contact them. We can talk to them. On this slide, we have the two most relevant committees to us. And most legislation that's going to be affecting our lakes are going to go to one of these two committees. And you can find out what is happening. You can even watch committee meetings because they live stream them. And so my point really is that we really can make a difference. We can make our voices heard. If you click on one of these links, you can find the committee agenda, committee members. If you click on each of the members' names, you can find their email address, their phone number. You can find out where they're from, what their interests are, what their background is. And legislators do want to hear from us. They do want to hear what we have to say and what our issues are. You can ask to come in when a bill comes up of interest. You can simply send an email request that you want to be on the agenda and you want to testify. You can submit written testimony also on bills. So these are all things that can be done, and I think are important, that have helped to get, I think it helped us to get the 500,000 into the state budget. I think it's helped to move the reclassification legislation that's necessary, because we've been able to speak to these issues. So I don't want to go on and on about this. I think that understanding and being able to understand how this process works has been very helpful. I'm still learning. I have learned a few things. These legislators on these committees cover a lot of territory. So, approaching them is, basically be very clear, don't use a lot of jargon, be brief, and concrete examples are very, very helpful, because they have to process a lot of information fairly quickly. So that's all I want to say on this. I'd be happy to talk more about it, or, open it up for questions.
Pat, I just wanted to say that Beth has her hand up, but I'm not sure if she's already spoken. So I thought I would, because I wasn't sure if you could see her.
I could not, but go ahead and.
I haven't. And actually, my question was around the dollars in the state budget. I think, as everybody's
Sure.
aware, last year there was a significant decrement because of the loss of some of the funding that came through to the DEC in the dollars that were going out to the greeters program. And they also were very clear that because of the decrease in funding, that they would not be supporting maintenance projects like harvesting. So, as we've been rethinking our greeter program this year, I'm with like Bombazine, we've actually been thinking about cutting it back a bit, which, we hadn't necessarily, I think, incorporated the knowledge of this additional funding. So I guess I'm trying to understand, do you think this is all going to go to the greeters? Is it going to go to other programs that DEC is supporting? Is it all focused on AIS? Just some additional thoughts. And then I guess the other part of it, sort of completely not separate, but secondary, it would seem like it would be really helpful for all of us who do these programs to create a bit of a summary report for FOVLAP to present up to the state at the end of the year, like, hey, this is great, look what you've accomplished, please make sure you include it again. So thoughts on that, but I'm very interested in more information on the real first question is, should we rethink on so we had expanded our greeting program, and then, because of the money shrinking down, we shrank it down again. How would you think about re-expanding that for this year?
I think that question is very interesting, because at 3:00 this afternoon, we're going to be meeting with Kim Jensen and Olin Reed to ask that very question. So I hope we'll have more information. I mean, the expectation has been that the 500,000 would be added to the current 350 that's in the motorboat registration fee, so that there would be an increase, and that would give us a chance then to work on the next step, which would be, how do we replace that 350 in the motorboat registration fee? But we've gotten some other, the question is still out there. So we're going to meet with Kim Jensen this afternoon and ask that question. And we hope that we'll have a better answer and be able to share that with members.
So that would be super helpful. I am, fortunately for me, I just retired, and so I am leaving on a very long retirement trip. And normally, would go to the meeting that Kim runs and then finalize my application. But I've actually already got it, and it's in Hillary's hands. But I can expand it. But the sooner you know something, because I'm going to leave like in 10 days, I would really appreciate it, hearing about
Sure.
it. And you could just let Liz Bird know, or let me know directly. I'll put my email address in the chat.
Be great.
That'd be so helpful. Thank you so much.
Other questions or comments? If I could, I'd like to circle back. Oh, wait. Go ahead. Is
Hi,
that Jen
Pat.
again?
Yeah,
Jen.
this is Jen. Hi. I was just going to hop off of Beth's comment that she just made. And I think a really easy way to share the information about what has happened at each greeter program is to have Kim Jensen just forward that information to whoever needs to get that. Because we all, if we do grants, have to, as you were saying, have deliverables that we need to be responsible for. And amongst those is a report at the end of the year. So I'm sure that Kim has all that information. It would just be adding one more thing to Kim's very long list of things that she's responsible for, but
That's true.
that would be a quick email.
Yep.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
just thinking the opportunity for FOVLAP having sort of like tried to get this dollars in the budget to also then go back and say, hey, look, you know, this is great. It just get more credit for us and all that we do. I'm not that Kim shouldn't be involved in that, but just really more a little PR on our end.
Well, Susan's smiling because she's been working on just such a survey that we were going to send out actually in the next couple of weeks. I promise. We're working on it to just sort of collect some of that information beyond what Kim does provide a little bit of, you know, a little bit of a summary report, but to provide a little bit more, delving a little bit more in detail. But I think that's also a great idea to have an, you know, end of the season type of report. And we really could think about that too, you know, either what Kim gets or just sharing.
I
to be able
thought
to-
it would also, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I would
Jackie.
just, suggest that you also, when you're reaching out to Kim, is to also CC Olin Reed, because he's the one that's dealing with the greeter programs. And if I'm sending something to Kim, about greeters, I usually CC Olin. It's usually Olin that gets back to me. So that just is another opportunity because you said like Kim's plate is overflowing. And Olin's pretty good about getting back.
Yep, no, that's a good point. We have to remember Olin's there. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, I just want to say, I reached out to Kim a couple of weeks ago when we got that information from Beth Torpy, just about how much of that $500,000 was going to the actual greeter programs this year. And her email that I think I sent to some people stated that there's not going to be an increase in the amount of money, which has been about $250,000 every year, that's going to go to the greeter program. Specifically, there's a bigger pot of things that grant and aid program is allotted for, and you can actually see that on the website. So I've not gotten a specific response to her. She said they were going to meet and they were going to come up with a figure. So I'm glad that you're going to meet with her this afternoon. And my experience has been reaching out to Olin, who actually does the fundamentals of the greeter program when it's in full blast, is great. But if you start asking these kinds of questions, he refers you to Kim Jensen. So I just want to say that, Jackie, that was my last year's experience.
Yes. Well, we will work on that, and I will say that when we don't get the answer we would like to have or think we should have, then there's always other steps. And you know, I've always believed in you go up the ladder. If we need to, we will. And it doesn't guarantee success, but you know, we feel that there should be, that this was an increase in funding, and so we should see an increase in funding. So fingers crossed on that one. And that, you know, that I didn't mention that I talked about legislators, but we do meet with on the state side too. I've been regularly meeting with the DEC Commissioner of Fish and Wildlife. And, you know, so we have conversations. You know, we've met with Julie Moore, Secretary of ANR as well. So, you know, there's other opportunities that we can make our voices heard that way as well. And they listen as well as the legislators listen. I did want to circle back since we have a couple of minutes. We're a little bit, we're up to 1:30, but we just take another minute to mention in terms of locals, Jeremy and I had a little exchange earlier because not all towns have these, but if your town has a conservation commission, and a number of towns do have them, that's another good place to get support for work you're doing. Because if the Conservation Commission, if it exists in the town, is often, the select board will often look to the Conservation Commission as sort of the spokesperson on natural resource type issues. And my home lake is Lake Iroquois. We have 3 towns that we have to deal with. And we have found that when the Conservation Commission chair comes into the select board and supports what we've come in from the lake, with, whatever projects we're coming in with, that it gets us a lot more credibility with the select board and a lot more support from the select board. So that's another good strategy to use if you happen to have a conservation commission in your town. Are there other comments or questions?
Pat, I have a couple of comments, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Jen.
Another thing I think that we need to remember to advocate for is effective enforcement of rules that are on the books. And I have to say that the warden that takes care of the northeast part of the state where I reside in Glover is a wonderful human being. She's easy to talk to. She's very respectful. I've had nothing but great interactions with her. However, she is spread so thin that there is no way that she is going to be able to deal with all of the violations that occur in a timely manner. I have no blame to place on this woman. She's amazing. But I am concerned that the state can't enforce the rules that they already have on the books. And that is one area that I think we need to make sure to be advocates for. The other thing is, as my right-hand man David was talking about earlier, about the situation of the dam at Shadow, I'd really love for us to and I know it's not just Shadow. I know there are many other lakes that are having issues with their dams. And I think it's going to be really important for all of the lake associations and FOVLAP to give a little bit of encouragement, shall we say, to make sure that dams are inspected regularly, that the recommendations that the experts from the dam division have some teeth in them so that they can get the repairs done on the dam that need to happen. And also so that lake associations can be A, informed, and B, inform the dam owners to be able to work together in a congenial atmosphere so that we can get the problem solved.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Those are great points. Really good points. Jeremy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, just happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
I'll mention that Lake St. Catherine, Jeremy's home lake, has done a fabulous job of outreach to their local representatives, senators, select boards, various local officials. And it's helpful to have that support, I think. Okay, I see nothing else, and we're already a little bit past time. So I think we'll close for now. I want just to say a couple of more things. I want to thank everybody who spoke today. Speakers, thanks for the prep. Thank you everybody for attending and participating. Want to remind you our next event will be February 20th, and this will be all about Lake Watershed Action Plans. So some questions came up, it was kind of mentioned today, so you'll learn a lot more on February 20th. That'll be another couple hours, I think. Also, as we close the meeting, a very brief survey is going to pop up, so don't get off right away. We really appreciate it if you'd answer the survey. It's only a couple questions. Not only will it tell us whether you like this kind of a format where we have a little more discussion and back and forth, and also particularly suggested topics for additional events. Does anyone else have any comments they want to add? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance. Please fill out the survey before you leave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Where's the survey?
Don't see the survey.
You seeing it? It's not coming up. Is it coming up? Maybe when you end, if you click off, if you start to end, hopefully it shows up. That's what Dave Johnson told me.
You can leave the meeting, but if I leave, I don't know if I can come back.
Yeah, click on leave the meeting and see if it should come up. Hopefully it'll come up. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the meeting now.